On stage, they smiled, sang about love, faith, and the beauty of small-town life. But behind the spotlight, some of country music's most beloved stars hid tempers, addictions, and cruelty that shattered the people around them. In this video, the Country Rewind pulls back the curtain on 12 country singers who fooled the world. Artists who seemed nice on stage, but were shockingly nasty in real life. One, Glen Campbell, the charming gentleman with a dark shadow. To the world, Glen Campbell was the smiling cowboy with a golden voice, the man who sang Rhinestone Cowboy and made America believe again in hope and tenderness. On stage, his charisma was effortless. He cracked jokes, flashed that movie star grin, and seemed to embody everything pure about country music. Fans adored his charm. TV hosts called him the nicest man in Nashville. But what no one saw behind the glitter and applause was a man ruled by addiction, rage, and self-destruction. Campbell's rise from poverty in Arkansas to Hollywood fame was the American dream written in guitar chords. Yet as the spotlight grew brighter, so did his demons. By the 1970s, he was deep into cocaine, painkillers, and heavy drinking. Colleagues recalled him arriving late, belligerent, sometimes unable to perform. He masked his instability with laughter. But once the camera stopped rolling, the gentleman disappeared, replaced by someone volatile, unpredictable, and often cruel. The most infamous chapter of his life was his relationship with singer Tanya Tucker. To fans, they were a power couple, beauty and talent united. In private, it was chaos. Tanya later described violent outbursts, destroyed hotel rooms, and nights that ended with her bruised and terrified. Campbell's temper, fueled by drugs and jealousy, made her life a cycle of fear. Friends begged him to seek help, but he refused, insisting the world was against him. He could charm a room of strangers, Tanya said years later, and then turn around and become someone I didn't recognize. Even after rehab and religious awakening, Campbell struggled to make peace with his past. He tried to rebuild his image, recording gospel songs, touring with his children, and publicly embracing faith. But those close to him knew that guilt haunted him more deeply than fame ever could. His late-life battle with Alzheimer's almost seemed like cruel irony. The man who wanted to forget his sins was slowly forgotten by the world. When Glen Campbell died in 2017, tributes poured in for the voice, the hits, the legend. Few mentioned the damage left behind. His story is a stark reminder that even in the purest melodies, darkness can hide between the notes. 2. Merle Haggard, the rebel who couldn't escape himself. Merle Haggard was country music's outlaw poet, the voice of the working man, the drifter, the sinner who'd been redeemed. To his fans, he was tough yet tender, the kind of man who turned prison time into poetry. On stage, he stood tall with that quiet dignity, a symbol of honesty and grit. But away from the microphone, the real Merle was a storm, full of rage, paranoia, and self-inflicted wounds that scarred everyone close to him. Born into poverty during the Great Depression, Merle grew up in a converted boxcar in California. His father's death when he was 9 left a wound that never healed. By his teens, he was running wild, stealing cars, hopping trains, living like a ghost on the edge of the law. When he landed in San Quentin prison, he met Johnny Cash, whose performance there changed his life. Haggard vowed to reform, and he did. For a time. His songs, like Mama Tried and Sing Me Back Home, carried a raw truth that came straight from his scars. America fell in love with his redemption story. But fame brought new demons. Merle became known for his explosive temper and his controlling behavior toward wives and bandmates. Behind his rugged charm was deep insecurity, a man haunted by guilt and resentment. He cheated, drank heavily, and pushed away the very people who tried to help him. His second wife, Bonnie Owens, once said, Merle could sing about heartbreak better than anyone because he caused it everywhere he went. In public, Haggard preached patriotism and old-fashioned values, but privately, he wrestled with his own hypocrisy. His political rants and mood swings alienated friends. Musicians who worked with him described walking on eggshells, never sure which Merle they'd get, the kind storyteller or the bitter tyrant. And though he sang of freedom, he often became a prisoner of his past. In his later years, illness and regret softened him. He spoke more openly about the pain he caused and the bridges he burned. Yet even then, there was a shadow in his eyes, the look of a man who'd never truly forgiven himself. When Merle Haggard died on his 79th birthday in 2016, fans remembered the outlaw hero. But those who knew him best remembered a man who fought his demons every single day and often lost. 3. Tammy Wynette, the First Lady of Country and the Queen of Control. Tammy Wynette's voice defined an era, trembling with heartbreak, devotion, and the quiet strength of Southern womanhood. Stand By Your Man made her a household name, the saint of sacrifice in country music's golden age. On stage, she embodied loyalty and grace, a woman who sang about love surviving every storm. But behind that gentle smile was a darker truth. Tammy Wynette's real life was a web of manipulation, secrecy, and emotional chaos. Born Virginia Wynette Pugh in rural Mississippi, she grew up in poverty, picking cotton and dreaming of escape. Her rise to fame in the 1960s was meteoric, a single mother turned superstar whose songs spoke to women everywhere. Yet, fame brought a cost. Tammy was obsessed with control over her career, her image, even the people she loved. Those closest to her described a woman who needed to dominate every situation, no matter how fragile she appeared on camera. Her marriages told a story very different from her music. The most infamous was her turbulent union with George Jones, a pairing that became both legend and tragedy. While fans adored their duets, their home life was filled with screaming fights, drunken rampages, and constant jealousy. Tammy played the victim in public, but behind closed doors, she knew how to wound with words, to manipulate guilt like a weapon. She once told a friend, "I don't sing about heartbreak, I cause it." After the divorce, her personal life spiraled. Multiple failed marriages followed, each marked by drama, painkillers, and accusations. There were whispers about a mysterious kidnapping in 1978. Tammy claimed she was abducted and beaten, but the details never added up. Many in Nashville suspected it was staged to gain sympathy or deflect attention from personal turmoil. Even decades later, that story remains one of country music's most haunting mysteries. As her health declined, Tammy clung to her fame, keeping a strict hold on her narrative. She surrounded herself with loyalists who protected her image until the end. When she died in 1998, at just 55, fans mourned the First Lady of Country Music. But those who had known her best spoke quietly of the control, the secrets, and the emotional scars she left behind. Tammy Wynette's life was the ultimate contradiction. A woman who preached devotion but lived in turmoil, who stood by her man but never truly stood still. 4. George Jones, the voice of pain and the master of destruction. To many, George Jones was the greatest country singer of all time, the man who could pour an entire life of heartbreak into a single line of melody. Songs like "He Stopped Loving Her Today" made him a legend, a poetic soul whose voice seemed carved from sorrow itself. But offstage, Jones was a walking disaster, violent, addicted, and cruel to those who loved him most. His story is one of genius battling madness, and a man who destroyed nearly everything he touched. Born into poverty in Texas, George grew up surrounded by violence and alcohol. His father drank heavily, and George followed that path early. Music became his escape, but the bottle always waited at the end of every show. As his fame rose in the 1960s, he earned the nickname No-Show Jones for his infamous habit of missing concerts, sometimes disappearing for days on end, leaving fans and bandmates furious. Behind the charm and humor, there was a bottomless pit of self-loathing that no applause could fill. His marriage to Tammy Wynette was both a dream and a nightmare. Together they became country's royal couple, until George's drinking turned violent. Tammy would lock herself in rooms as George raged through the house, firing guns or smashing furniture. Once, after she hid his car keys to stop him from driving drunk, he famously rode a lawnmower 8 miles to buy more liquor. To fans, that story was funny. To Tammy, it was terrifying. Jones's addictions cost him nearly everything: his marriages, his money, and his dignity. By the late 1970s, he was bankrupt, incoherent, and unrecognizable. He performed drunk, fought with promoters, and lived like a ghost between benders. Friends like Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings tried to intervene, but George was unreachable. "You can't save a man who doesn't want to be saved," Tammy once said. In the 1980s, after meeting Nancy Sepulvado, he finally found stability. She helped him sober up and rebuild his career. Yet even in redemption, the damage was undeniable. The years of cruelty and chaos had taken their toll, and Jones carried guilt that never truly lifted. When he died in 2013, Nashville mourned a legend, not a saint, a man who sang of pain because he lived it every day. George Jones's legacy is a paradox, a voice that could heal others born from a heart that never healed itself. 5. Johnny Cash, the Man in Black and the Shadows Within. To the world, Johnny Cash was a symbol of redemption, the sinner who found salvation, the outlaw who spoke for the broken and the forgotten. On stage, dressed in black, he sang about truth, faith, and pain with a voice that shook the soul. America adored him for his honesty. But behind that image of moral revival was a man often consumed by anger, guilt, and self-destruction. A man whose darkness wasn't just a stage costume. Cash's early life shaped his dual nature. Growing up in rural Arkansas during the Depression, he watched his older brother Jack die in a gruesome accident, a trauma that haunted him forever. That tragedy carved a permanent wound in him, and it seemed to whisper through every song he ever wrote. When fame arrived, it didn't heal him. It magnified the emptiness. Drugs became his comfort. Pills, alcohol, and amphetamines blurred the edges of his pain and fed the wild persona he'd later mythologize. In the 1960s, Cash was both preacher and devil, performing in prisons like Folsom and San Quentin, preaching compassion, then backstage collapsing under addiction. He destroyed hotel rooms, cheated on Vivian Liberto, the wife who had stood by him through poverty, and abandoned his children for months at a time. Vivian later said, "Johnny Cash on stage was a hero. At home, he was someone I didn't recognize." His affair with June Carter began as a spark between two stars and turned into an escape from chaos. June helped him get sober, saved his career, and became part of the legend. But their marriage wasn't as perfect as fans imagined. Cash's temper and ego sometimes resurfaced, especially when he felt trapped by his own image as the redeemed outlaw. He preached truth in his songs, yet wrestled daily with deceit, self-pity, and the hunger for control. By the 1980s, he became a man of faith and reflection, using his later albums to confess his sins in music rather than words. When June died in 2003, his heart broke completely. He followed her 4 months later, leaving behind a legacy wrapped in contradiction. Holiness and rebellion, love and destruction. Johnny Cash remains country music's most complicated saint, proof that redemption can be real, but never simple. Leanne Rimes, the sweetheart who turned sour. When Leanne Rimes first appeared on the country scene at just 13 years old, she was hailed as a miracle. A golden-voiced prodigy who seemed to embody innocence, humility, and raw talent. Her breakout hit Blue captured the spirit of classic country, and America embraced her as the new generation's sweetheart. She smiled shyly in interviews, spoke about her love for family and faith, and became the poster child for purity in a world full of showbiz excess. But behind that angelic image, Leanne was already learning how to play the fame game. And years later, she would weaponize that same charm to get exactly what she wanted. Fame came too fast, and childhood slipped away before she even realized it. By her late teens, Leanne was fighting bitter legal battles with her own father, accusing him of stealing millions. He, in turn, called her ungrateful and obsessed with control. The young girl who once seemed humble had grown hardened, suspicious, manipulative, and fiercely protective of her empire. Behind closed doors, she built a reputation for mood swings and perfectionism that drove producers and bandmates to exhaustion. Then came the scandal that shattered her sweetheart image. Her affair with actor Eddie Cibrian. Both were married at the time, and when the affair became public, fans were stunned. Leanne's carefully polished persona imploded overnight. Instead of showing remorse, she flaunted the relationship, mocking Cibrian's ex-wife on social media, giving smug interviews, and posting love songs clearly aimed at stirring controversy. The woman once known for emotional ballads became tabloid fuel for arrogance and cruelty. Her career began to crumble under the weight of her behavior. Critics noted her erratic performances, her thinly veiled feuds with other artists, and her growing obsession with defending herself online. She blamed the media, her upbringing, and her mental health struggles, but refused to take full accountability. "People love to make me the villain," she said in an interview, "but they never admit they wanted me to fall." In recent years, Leanne has tried to rebuild her image through wellness projects and new music, presenting herself as a survivor of fame's brutality. Yet to many in Nashville, she remains a cautionary tale, a once gifted prodigy who lost her grace chasing power and revenge. Leanne Rimes fooled the world with her voice of innocence, but behind the songs was someone far less pure, proof that even country's brightest angels can grow wings made of thorns. 7. Blake Shelton, the charmer who couldn't hide his cruel side. Blake Shelton built his empire on charisma. With his Oklahoma drawl, easy smile, and everyman humor, he became one of country music's most beloved stars, a judge on The Voice, a chart-topping artist, and the kind of guy who seemed like your funny, beer-loving friend from down the road. To fans, he was genuine, kind, and loyal. But inside Nashville's inner circles, a different picture emerged. One of arrogance, volatility, and a sharp tongue that could cut deeper than any song he ever sang. Blake's rise was a mix of talent and timing. In the early 2000s, hits like Austin and Some Beach made him a heartland hero. But as his fame grew, so did his ego. Industry insiders began whispering that Shelton's good old boy act was just that, an act. Behind the scenes, he was known for mocking younger artists, dismissing critics, and berating crew members when things didn't go his way. One producer later remarked, "Blake can be charming in a room full of people, but he can also be the meanest man in Nashville when the cameras are off." His personal life was equally turbulent. His marriage to Miranda Lambert was the stuff of tabloid legend. Two powerhouse country stars locked in a love story that burned too bright. But behind the duets and red carpet smiles was constant fighting, jealousy, and betrayal. Both were accused of infidelity, and when their marriage collapsed, Blake wasted no time spinning the narrative in his favor. He painted himself as the wounded husband, the man who'd been wronged, while quietly starting a romance with pop singer Gwen Stefani before the dust had even settled. His public persona became increasingly cynical. He took to Twitter with biting sarcasm, often lashing out at critics or fans who challenged him. What used to seem like playful teasing began to look like cruelty. Former colleagues from The Voice later hinted that he could be dismissive and manipulative behind the scenes, especially toward contestants who didn't fit his image of real country. Yet despite it all, Shelton remains a fixture in country music, proof that charm can outshine controversy if wielded skillfully enough. He still cracks jokes, raises a glass on stage, and plays the part of the laid-back cowboy. But for those who've seen the man behind the smile, that charm feels hollow. A mask worn by someone who long ago stopped being as nice as he seemed. Blake Shelton may have fooled millions with his grin and twang, but behind that charm lies a man far rougher than the country dream he sells. 8. Faith Hill, America's sweetheart with a steel heart. For years, Faith Hill embodied the image of perfection, the elegant Southern beauty, the devoted wife, the flawless voice that carried songs like Breathe and This Kiss. To fans, she was the purest face of country music, gracious, classy, and unshakably kind. Alongside her husband, Tim McGraw, she seemed to live a fairy tale life, country's royal couple, raising a family while ruling the charts. But behind that golden glow was a woman known for her fierce temper, rigid control, and an icy demand for loyalty that made her both admired and feared in Nashville. Faith's story began humbly in Star, Mississippi, where she was adopted as a baby and raised in a loving, church-going home. When she chased her dream to Nashville, she was determined and ruthless about making it. Her stunning looks and voice quickly caught attention, but so did her perfectionism. Early collaborators recall that she expected nothing short of excellence and would fire anyone who didn't meet her impossible standards. She smiles for the fans, one tour member said, but behind the scenes, she runs her world like a general. Her marriage to Tim McGraw only magnified the illusion of harmony. On stage, they were the picture of love, singing duets that melted hearts. Offstage, they were locked in constant power struggles. Faith reportedly monitored his every move, who he spoke to, where he went, how he appeared in public. Rumors of jealousy and explosive arguments followed them from tour to tour. Those close to the couple have described Hill as deeply controlling, insisting that every detail, from lighting to interviews, revolve around her image. Her relationships with other female artists were often tense. Faith bristled at comparisons to younger stars like Carrie Underwood, and once famously storming off stage at the CMA Awards after losing, muttering, "What?" a moment fans later replayed endlessly online. To her supporters, it was passion. To others, it was the real Faith slipping through the cracks of her polished mask. Over time, she stepped away from the spotlight, focusing on family and selective projects. Yet, even in retreat, she guarded her reputation like a fortress, ensuring that the sweetheart of country image would never fade. Those who worked with her privately call her one of the toughest, most intimidating women in the business, a mix of grace and iron will. Faith Hill may sing about love and devotion, but in the world behind the music, she's proof that sweetness can sometimes be the most powerful form of control. 9. Jason Aldean, the good old boy who played dirty. Jason Aldean was supposed to be the modern face of country's blue-collar pride, the small-town Georgia boy who never forgot where he came from. With hits like Dirt Road Anthem and She's Country, he built his brand on authenticity. The loyal husband, the proud family man, the honest country rebel. Fans saw him as a straight shooter, someone who represented real American values. But offstage, Jason Aldean's private life was a tangle of deceit, arrogance, and scandal that shattered the image he so carefully crafted. Aldean's career rose fast in the 2000s. He wasn't just successful, he was dominant. Stadium tours, multi-platinum albums, and a swagger that made him the poster child for bro country. But as his fame grew, whispers followed him. Behind the grin and cowboy hat was a man who lived recklessly, rude to staff, dismissive of colleagues, and known to explode when things didn't go his way. He walks into a room like he owns it, said one former tour assistant. And if you challenge him, you're gone. Then came the scandal that exposed everything. In 2012, Aldean was photographed kissing Brittany Kerr, a former American Idol contestant, while still married to his high school sweetheart, Jessica Ussery. The tabloids erupted. At first, he claimed it was a mistake, begging fans for forgiveness. But months later, he divorced Jessica and publicly began dating Kerr, confirming what many already suspected. The affair wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. Fans who once saw him as the faithful country boy began to see a cold, calculating star who cared more about damage control than honesty. Even as the controversy faded, Aldean's reputation in Nashville never fully recovered. Crew members described him as moody and entitled, often berating workers for small mistakes. Critics accused him of arrogance, of acting like he was untouchable. His later years were marred by political rants and the infamous "Try That in a Small Town" video, which was condemned for its violent imagery and racial undertones. Instead of apologizing, Aldean doubled down, claiming he was being targeted for telling the truth. To his fans, Jason Aldean remains a symbol of defiance, the rebel who won't bow to public pressure. But to many inside the industry, he's the embodiment of hypocrisy, a man who sold authenticity while living a lie. Jason Aldean may still sing about small-town morals, but his real story is one of betrayal, ego, and the kind of pride that leaves nothing pure behind. 10. Miranda Lambert, the rebel queen with a mean streak. Miranda Lambert rose to fame as country music's fiery sweetheart, the pistol-packing Texas girl who sang about heartbreak, revenge, and empowerment with unapologetic grit. Fans loved her for her authenticity and sass. She wasn't polished like Nashville's pop stars. She was raw, real, and fearless. Songs like Gunpowder and Lead and Mama's Broken Heart made her a hero to women everywhere. But behind that image of independence and honesty lay a side of Miranda few ever saw. Vindictive, jealous, and capable of cruelty that left even her closest friends stunned. Lambert's reputation for toughness wasn't just a stage persona. From her earliest days in the industry, she was known for clashing with other artists, managers, and even journalists who crossed her. Colleagues described her as unpredictable, charming one moment, cold the next. She doesn't just hold grudges, one insider said. She builds shrines to them. Her perfectionism and temper often turned recording sessions into battlegrounds, where anyone who disagreed with her vision found themselves swiftly replaced. Her marriage to Blake Shelton was a powder keg from the start. They were country's golden couple, beautiful, talented, unstoppable, until it all imploded. Behind the smiles and red carpet appearances was a relationship poisoned by jealousy and mistrust. Miranda's controlling nature and Blake's wandering eye created constant chaos. When their marriage ended, both accused the other of infidelity. Lambert's songs afterward dripped with venom, painting herself as the wronged woman. Yet many in Nashville whispered that she'd been just as guilty of betrayal. After the divorce, Miranda's public behavior only fueled her reputation as country's mean girl. She was rumored to feud with female artists, belittle staff, and openly mock younger singers who threatened her spotlight. Her short-lived relationships with several musicians, including a police officer she married within months, reinforced the image of someone impulsive and driven by ego. Fans noticed her social media posts turning spiteful, full of veiled jabs and sarcastic swipes at her exes and critics. Still, few could deny her brilliance. Her songwriting remained sharp, often laced with bitterness that revealed as much about her as it did her targets. But behind the power anthems and tough girl persona was a woman struggling to control everything and everyone around her. Miranda Lambert's fire made her a star, but it also burned bridges faster than she could build them. To many, she's still the rebel queen of country music. To those who know her best, she's proof that strength without grace can turn even the brightest flame into a dangerous blaze. 11. Morgan Wallen, who couldn't grow up. Morgan Wallen was supposed to be the future of country music. A handsome Tennessee kid with a rough edge, a voice soaked in Southern whiskey, and a sound that blended tradition with modern swagger. Fans loved his rebel charm, his mullet, and his one-of-us attitude. He sang about heartbreak, small-town pride, and Friday nights with friends, the kind of stories every country listener could relate to. But behind the stage lights and good old boy image was a man who couldn't escape his own recklessness, a rising star whose immaturity and arrogance nearly destroyed everything he built. Wallen's early success was meteoric. After The Voice introduced him to the world, hits like Whiskey Glasses and Wasted on You made him Nashville's new golden boy. He seemed unstoppable, but fame revealed cracks in his foundation: a temper, a lack of discipline, and a dangerous attraction to chaos. He partied hard, drank harder, and left a trail of broken relationships and public scandals. For a time, his label and fans brushed it off as wild youth, but that excuse couldn't hide what came next. In 2021, everything changed. A video surfaced showing Morgan drunkenly yelling a racial slur outside his home. The backlash was immediate and massive. Radio stations dropped his music, his label suspended him, and the industry turned its back. For a man who built his brand on being the real deal, the hypocrisy was glaring. Wallen apologized tearfully, claiming ignorance and promising to learn, but many saw it as a performance, not repentance. "He's not sorry for what he said," one former colleague remarked. "He's sorry he got caught." Yet astonishingly, the controversy didn't end him. It made him bigger. His fans doubled down, framing him as a victim of cancel culture. Album sales soared. Morgan leaned into the outlaw persona, refusing to fully confront his actions, and Nashville quietly welcomed him back. But behind the success, insiders describe a man still at war with himself, moody, unpredictable, and prone to self-sabotage. In interviews, he talks about redemption and growing up, but old habits linger. He's been caught in more bar incidents, late-night chaos, and tabloid headlines. It's as if he's trapped between the man he wants to be and the boy who never learned restraint. Morgan Wallen fooled the world by selling authenticity while living recklessly. His story isn't about being canceled, it's about refusing to change. And until he faces his own demons, every song about regret will sound more like denial than redemption. 12. Billy Ray Cyrus, the father, the fame, and the fallout. When Billy Ray Cyrus burst onto the scene in the early 90s with Achy Breaky Heart, he became a cultural phenomenon overnight. With his long hair, humble charm, and easy grin, he was the kind of star middle America could claim as their own. A family man, a simple soul from Kentucky who sang about love, heartbreak, and staying true to your roots. But as the years went by, that wholesome image unraveled. Behind the smiles and the aw shucks persona was a man driven by ego, insecurity, and decisions that fractured his own family beyond repair. At first, Billy Ray was everything Nashville wanted: clean-cut, grateful, and good-hearted. But the success of Achy Breaky Heart went to his head faster than anyone expected. Critics mocked him as a one-hit wonder, and instead of humbling him, it made him bitter. He fought with producers, changed managers repeatedly, and blamed others for his fading popularity. By the 2000s, his career seemed finished, until fate handed him a second chance through his daughter, Miley Cyrus. When Hannah Montana exploded, Billy Ray reinvented himself as the cool, supportive dad who'd sacrificed fame for family. But behind that narrative, insiders say he was deeply controlling, determined to steer Miley's career and reap its rewards. As Miley transformed from Disney darling to global provocateur, their relationship grew toxic. He publicly criticized her choices while privately enjoying the spotlight her controversies brought him. Their once tight bond collapsed under the weight of hypocrisy. Billy Ray's personal life reflected the same chaos. His marriage to Tish Cyrus was a decades-long roller coaster of separations, reconciliations, and accusations. Friends described their household as emotionally volatile, a mix of ambition, resentment, and unspoken rivalry. After filing for divorce multiple times, Billy Ray shocked fans by marrying a woman 27 years younger than him, sparking rumors of betrayal within the family. In the aftermath, his children reportedly cut ties with him, including Miley, who stopped publicly acknowledging him altogether. Despite his efforts to project peace and faith, the cracks show. His social media posts drip with bitterness and self-pity, while interviews reveal a man obsessed with rewriting his own story. The humble Kentucky boy who once charmed the world has become a cautionary tale about fame's corrosion, a man who mistook attention for love and control for care. Billy Ray Cyrus may have sung about staying true to your heart, but in the end, his biggest betrayal was to the people who shared it with him. Phần của 12 nhân vật đã hoàn chỉnh.